I'm going to be talking about microaggressions theory and agenda setting. We'll first start with microaggressions. What is a microaggression? The term microaggression was coined in the 1970s, and then it was later expanded on by Daryl Wing Sue in 2007. He brought new attention to the topic of microaggressions in his research. So essentially, microaggressions are the everyday slights, insults, put-downs, invalidations, and offensive behaviors and comments that people of marginalized groups experience in interactions by generally well-intentioned people who just may be unaware of their impact. Almost any marginalized group can be the object of microaggressions. There's racial, gender, LGBTQ, and disability microaggressions that occur frequently towards these groups. Obviously, if there are some people that are overlap and fit in with two or more of those groups, the effects are going to be compounded. So I titled this slide, but I didn't mean it that way, just to really hit home that most individuals who commit microaggressions view themselves as moral and decent human beings who would never consciously discriminate against another person. But none of us are immune from inheriting the racial, gender, or sexual orientation biases of our society. Microaggressions contain a meta-communication, which is a hidden message to the target, which reveals that biased belief or attitude. There are several themes of racial microaggressions. When I was looking into microaggressions, racial is what I really saw the most research on, and we're going to go through a few of these for the sake of time. The first one is alien and own land. This is assuming that a person is foreign born, asking a question such as, where were you born? Or saying you speak good English. What does this communicate? That you must not truly be an American because you're not light-skinned or because you look like a foreigner. Ascription of intelligence. This is assigning intelligence to a person of color on the basis of their race, saying something like you're a credit to your race or you're so articulate. This is communicating that a person of color is generally not as intelligent as a Caucasian person, or that it's unusual for someone of your race to be so intelligent or well-spoken. Even asking an Asian person for help with a math or science problem, assuming that all Asians are good at math and science. Color blindness is another theme. These are statements that a white person may make when they're not acknowledging race, saying something like, I don't see color, or I'm not racist, I have black friends. This is communicating that you're denying a person of color's racial or ethnic experiences, or denying the person as a racial or cultural being. Saying something like America's a melting pot, that's a really common one, or there's only one race, the human race. With the melting pot comment, it could be well intended in saying like everybody's welcome here, but it could also be construed as telling the person that they need to assimilate or acculturate or, be within that melting pot and assimilate to the dominant American culture instead of maintaining their own identity. Criminality. This one is particularly offensive, and it made me think, have I ever done any of these things before? This is assuming that a person of color is dangerous, criminal, or deviant on the basis of their race. Some examples include a white person clutching a purse or checking their wallet as a person of color approaches or passes, a store owner following or closely watching a person of color, or a white person waiting for the next elevator when a person of color is on it. Obviously, this communicates you are a criminal, you're dangerous, you're going to steal, and how, offensive and hurtful that must feel to that person. Second-class citizen is another theme. This happens when a white person is given preferential treatment as a consumer over a person of color, like when a person of color is mistaken for a service worker. This communicates that people of color are the ones in service jobs. Or a taxi cab passing up a person of color to pick up a white person. This is communicating that you're likely trouble or you live in a dangerous neighborhood. I'd rather not have you in my cab. Or being ignored at a store counter as attention is given to the white customer. This is communicating that a white customer is more valued than the person of color. Environmental microaggressions. This is not individual comments or behaviors from a person, but more macro level microaggressions, which are apparent on a more of a systemic or environmental level. This is something like university buildings all being named after white heterosexual upper class males. And that communicates to a person of color on a university campus, you don't belong here, or you won't succeed here, or you're not like us. Another example is TV shows featuring predominantly white people without representation of people of color. This communicates you don't exist, you're not important enough to feature, or you aren't what people want to see. Those are some examples of environmental microaggressions. Obviously, there are microaggressions that occur towards other groups, such as women. Sheryl Sandberg, who was a former COO of Facebook and Meta platforms, she says that microaggressions make it harder for women to take risks, propose new ideas, or raise concerns. Women self-shield or self-monitor, meaning they change the way they act or look, or tone down what they say, or hide aspects of their identity to protect themselves from mistreatment, particularly in the workplace. And the majority of women, 78%, say that they have experienced microaggressions at work. Microaggressions, particularly in the workplace, can cause a lot of problems. It can contribute to low morale, lower productivity, lower problem solving, higher rates of depression, anxiety, and anger, and health problems such as high blood pressure. Some examples of microaggressions towards women, particularly in the workplace, is women being interrupted more often than men. This next one I have heard personally, women receiving comments on their emotional state saying, you're moody today. I've heard this one at work before, and it was very offensive to the person receiving that comment. Saying to a woman, are you sure that you want a career like this, or don't you want kids? Would those types of questions ever be directed towards a man? Or they must have really wanted a woman for this job. This says to her, well, that must be the only explanation for why you were chosen for this job. Microaggressions occur towards other groups, such as the LGBTQ community. More than 1 in 3 LGBTQ Americans have faced discrimination due to their sexual orientation or gender identity, and that's even higher for transgendered individuals. Some examples of microaggressions towards this group: assuming gender pronouns, not asking about which pronouns they use, or continuing to use the wrong pronouns even after the correct ones have been shared. Saying things like, you don't look gay, or you look as good as a woman. Denial of homophobia and transphobia, such as saying being gay is no big deal. Asking questions such as, which one is the husband? Or is one of you the husband and the other one is the wife? This one really made me think, these questions may be out of curiosity, but this is assumption of a heterosexual structure and feels minimalizing to the couple. For couples with children, asking which one of you is the father, which one of you is the mother. Microaggressions occur towards other groups, such as disabilities. There's a lot more research, which is what I had found when I was looking for research articles on this topic. There's more research associated with race and ethnicity and gender and sexual orientation microaggressions, and there's a lot less regarding microaggressions experienced by people with disabilities. There are some examples that I found, such as saying something like, we all have some type of disability, denial or minimizing of the disability experience, asking what happened to you. This may be out of curiosity without ill intent, but can be construed as denial of privacy and make the person feel uncomfortable. Overly helping when a person with a disability doesn't need help, or they refuse help. Saying, let me do that for you, implies helplessness. Saying something like, you people are so inspiring, that can come across as very patronizing. Saying something like, I can't believe you're married, or I don't think I could date someone in a wheelchair, or how are you intimate with your partner? That's insulting to imply that a person of color is not attractive or worthy, and desexualization of that person. So what can we do about microaggressions? Critics of the microaggression theory call microaggressions macro nonsense, while others argue that microaggressions are not micro, rather that they have a powerful impact. So to combat microaggressions, here's some tips that I found. Be aware and sensitive of your words and comments. Educate yourself about what microaggressions exist for different communities, like all the different examples that I just went through. Learn how to ask respectful questions. Try not to avoid difficult topics, but rather discover how to engage in them. Give micro validations, acknowledging presence, voice your appreciation, validate identity. I did give an example of this one because I wanted to make sure that it was understood, but it means referring to people as they want to be referred to. Learn how to pronounce the person's name that may be different than yours. Don't assign nicknames because you don't know how to pronounce the name. The next theory that I'm going to talk about is agenda setting theory. So essentially, in a nutshell, agenda setting theory is, can the media shape public opinion? Can news outlets and news and media outlets, do they have significant control or influence over political, cultural, and social news stories? Do they have the power to choose which issue or event to prioritize and therefore impact how the public perceives these news? Types of agenda setting: there's public, media, and policy. Public is when the public or public interest determines or influences the importance of a particular story. They can impact the agenda of the news for a certain amount of time. Media, this is when the media determines the importance of a set of stories, such as deciding which stories to include in the evening news broadcast. And then there's policy. When the public and media influence the agenda of the news, it could influence the agenda and decisions of public policy makers. Factors that impact agenda setting: accessibility. This is the frequency and prominence of a particular issue within the news, making it more accessible to the audience. A good example that I saw here was high frequency coverage of a sporting event. So this story is going to be highly accessible to the audience, and this can influence how important the audience perceives that event to be, which is a key component of agenda setting. There's also the idea of gatekeeping. An example of this is when an article for publication is reviewed by multiple parties, in addition to the writer, such as the editor and the publisher, and each of these gates may influence how the story appears and how the story is changed, and how it appears to the audience. Some other factors that impact agenda setting: industry, priming, framing, and non-media sources. Industry, this is, so say public relations, PR, a press conference is written about a client, and the PR professional may provide a positive perspective to influence the audience perspective of that client. Politics, this happens in campaigns. Campaigns are going to impact public opinion of a candidate or the importance of a policy issue. And then business, when business company leaders utilize agenda setting to maintain a positive reputation of the business with the public, within the public eye, they want to present it with a certain way. Priming, this is the idea of impacts how viewers perceive certain stories by highlighting a key story or issue as the most essential. Framing, this is the way that a news outlet shows certain content or perspective. So for an example of this is two different news outlets could approach a topic or story differently based on its values, standards, or audience. They're going to be presenting a story in two different lights from two different perspectives. That's the idea of framing. And then non-media sources, this is when government officials can impact agenda setting. For example, if a highly political event takes place, government officials may release a statement about the event to assure that the public receives a comprehensive explanation or official statement regarding the event. So this is essentially front-loading the perspective that they want to present. So that was a quick rundown on microaggressions and agenda setting theory. I hope that it was a good presentation and you learned a little something today. And here's the reference slides. Thank you.